Long before the name Prussia became famous across Europe, the land along the cold Baltic Sea was home to a unique group of people. These were the Old Prussians, a collection of pagan tribes who spoke a language all their own. The Roman historian Tacitus wrote about them nearly 2,000 years ago, calling them the Esti. He noted their skill in farming and their strange custom of collecting amber from the seashore. For centuries, these people lived in small, settled communities. They did not have a single king or a large, unified country. Instead, they were organized into clans, each with its own leaders. Their lives were deeply connected to the forests, rivers, and the sea that surrounded them. The culture of the Old Prussians was rich with ancient traditions and beliefs that had been passed down through many generations. They worshipped a pantheon of gods connected to nature, with deities representing the sky, thunder, and the earth. Sacred groves, old trees, and special springs were their places of worship, not grand temples built of stone. Their society was based on agriculture, and they were skilled at breeding horses, which were important for both work and warfare. They were also known for their trade in amber, the fossilized tree resin that washed up on their shores. This Baltic gold was highly prized in distant lands like the Roman Empire, making the Prussian coast an important, if remote, point of trade. Life for the Old Prussians was not always peaceful, as they were surrounded by more powerful and organized neighbors. From the east, the Russes people, led by rulers like Vladimir the Great, sometimes launched raids into their lands. From the west, the newly formed Kingdom of Poland, under leaders like Mieszko I, also saw the Prussian territory as a place for expansion and for spreading the Christian faith. These larger states saw the Prussians as pagans who needed to be converted, but also as a target for conquest. The Prussian tribes fought back fiercely to defend their homes and their way of life, but their lack of a central government made it difficult to organize a united defense against these persistent threats. Despite these external pressures, the Old Prussian way of life endured for a very long time. Their society was resilient, and they managed to maintain their independence and unique culture for centuries. They were a people of the land, defined by their connection to the Baltic coast and its dense forests. Their story was one of survival in a world that was slowly changing around them. However, a new and far more organized force was about to arrive from the south. This force, a military religious order, would not just raid their lands, it would seek to conquer them completely and reshape their world forever, setting in motion the chain of events that would create the state we now know as Prussia. The complete transformation of the Prussian lands began with an invitation in the year 1226. A Polish duke named Conrad of Mazovia was having a great deal of trouble with raids from his pagan Prussian neighbors. Unable to subdue them on his own, he sought help from a powerful group of German warrior monks known as the Teutonic Order. This order had been founded during the Third Crusade in the Holy Land, but now they were looking for a new mission. Duke Conrad offered them land in exchange for their help in fighting the Prussians. This invitation proved to be a pivotal moment, as the knights had ambitions that went far beyond simply helping a Polish duke. The Teutonic Order was not just a group of mercenaries, it was a highly organized and ambitious state within a state. Their leader, the Grand Master, secured a crucial document from the Holy Roman Emperor, Frederick II. This document, known as the Golden Bull of Rimini, gave the order the right to rule over any lands they conquered from the pagans. This meant they were not fighting for Poland, but for themselves. Armed with this authority and the blessing of the Pope for a new crusade, the Teutonic Knights began their systematic conquest of Prussia. Their method was slow but effective. They would advance into the territory, build a formidable stone or brick castle, and use it as a base to control the surrounding area. The conquest was a long and brutal affair that lasted for more than 50 years. The Old Prussian tribes did not give up their homeland easily. They fought back with great courage and determination, leading to many fierce battles. The most famous resistance was the Great Prussian Uprising, led by a skilled warrior named Hercus Monti, who had been educated in Germany and understood the knights' tactics. For a time, the uprising was successful, pushing the knights back and threatening to undo their progress. However, the Teutonic Order could draw on reinforcements from all over Germany and Europe, knights who came to the north to fight in the Crusade. Ultimately, the organized military power of the Teutonic Order was too much for the divided Prussian tribes to overcome. By the latter half of the 13th century, the resistance was crushed, and the Old Prussians were subdued. The knights forced the population to convert to Christianity, ending their ancient pagan traditions. To secure their new state, the order encouraged a massive wave of colonization. Thousands of German-speaking settlers moved into the region, building new towns and farming the land. Over time, the original Prussian language and culture faded away, as the native population was slowly absorbed into the new German-speaking society. The old Prussia was gone, replaced by the state of the Teutonic Order. With the conquest of the Old Prussians complete, the Teutonic Order established a powerful and unique state along the Baltic coast. This was not a kingdom ruled by a hereditary dynasty, but a monastic state governed by knight monks. At its head was the Grand Master, who ruled from the magnificent Marienburg Castle, one of the largest brick fortresses in the world. The entire land was dotted with impressive castles, which served as administrative centers, military bases, and monasteries. The order created a highly efficient and centralized government, controlling trade, agriculture, and law. They became a major economic force, dominating the lucrative grain and amber trade in the Baltic Sea region. Having secured Prussia, the knights turned their attention to their next great rival, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, which remained the last major pagan state in Europe. For over a century, the order waged a relentless holy war against the Lithuanians. This was a continuous cycle of raids and counter-raids, a brutal border war fought through the dense forests and marshes that separated the two powers. The knights saw this as a continuation of their crusading mission, and they attracted many guest crusaders from Western Europe who came to fight the pagans. Key battles, such as the Battle of Strava in 1348, demonstrated the order's military strength and kept the pressure on their Lithuanian foes. The constant threat from the Teutonic Order had a profound effect on the region's politics. It pushed Lithuania to seek a powerful ally. In 1385, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania and the Kingdom of Poland decided to join forces. They formed a personal union known as the Union of Kruo. When the Lithuanian Grand Duke Jogaila married the Polish Queen Jadwiga, became King of Poland as Władysław II Jagiello, and converted to Christianity. This single event dramatically changed the balance of power. The Teutonic Order's main justification for war, the fight against paganism, was now gone, as Lithuania had officially become a Christian nation. Despite Lithuania's conversion, the Teutonic Order did not cease its aggressive policies. The knights questioned the sincerity of the conversion, and continued to see the Polish-Lithuanian Union as a major threat to their state. The conflict was no longer about religion, it was now a raw struggle for political and territorial dominance in the region. The order continued to expand its territory, seizing lands that both Poland and Lithuania considered their own. This escalating tension and years of unresolved disputes made a massive, decisive war between the Teutonic Order and the allied forces of Poland-Lithuania almost inevitable. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the future of Eastern Europe. The simmering conflict between the Teutonic Order and the Polish-Lithuanian Union finally boiled over into the Great War of 1409 to 1411. The decisive moment of this war, and indeed one of the most important battles in medieval European history, took place on July 15, 1410. On a vast field between the villages of Grunwald and Tannenberg, the two massive armies met. The Teutonic Order, under the command of Grandmaster Ulrich von Jungingen, fielded a highly disciplined and heavily armored force of about 27,000 men. They were confident in their training, their superior equipment, and their long history of military victories. They stood ready, a sea of white cloaks marked with the stark black cross. Facing them was a larger and more diverse army, numbering close to 39,000 soldiers. This allied force was led by King Władysław II Jagiello of Poland and his cousin, Grand Duke Vytautas of Lithuania. Their army was a mosaic of different peoples, including Polish knights, Lithuanian warriors, and contingents of Russian, Tatar, and Bohemian troops. The battle began with a tense standoff, with the knights trying to provoke the allies into attacking. Finally, the fighting erupted with a Lithuanian cavalry charge. The battle raged for hours, a chaotic and brutal clash of steel, with fortunes shifting back and forth across the blood-soaked field. A critical moment in the battle occurred when the Lithuanian wing appeared to retreat. The Teutonic Knights, believing they were on the verge of victory, broke their disciplined formation and charged forward in pursuit. This may have been a planned tactical retreat by Vytautas. As the knights pursued, they were suddenly enveloped by Polish forces and the returning Lithuanian cavalry, who slammed into their flank and rear. The Order's army was surrounded and thrown into disarray. The Grand Master, Ulrich von Jungingen, was killed in the heart of the fighting along with most of the Order's leadership. The disciplined army of the Teutonic Knights collapsed into a rout. The defeat at the Battle of Grunwald was a catastrophic disaster for the Teutonic Order. Their military might was utterly shattered in a single day. Although the Allies failed to capture the Order's capital at Marienburg Castle in the siege that followed, the damage was done. The Peace of Thorn in 1411 forced the Knights to give up some territory, and more importantly, to pay a massive financial indemnity to Poland-Lithuania. This payment crippled the Order's economy for decades. The battle marked the beginning of the end for the Teutonic Order's supremacy. Their reputation was broken, their finances were in ruins, and their power in the Baltic region began a long and irreversible decline. The devastating blow of Grunwald sent the Teutonic Order into a steep decline from which it would never fully recover. The huge financial payments demanded by the Peace of Thorn forced the Knights to raise taxes heavily across their lands. This caused widespread discontent among the cities and the local nobility within Prussia, who felt their prosperity was being sacrificed to pay for the Order's military failures. An organization called the Prussian Confederation was formed by these cities and nobles, who began to look for an alternative to the heavy-handed rule of the Knights. They saw an opportunity to gain more autonomy and economic freedom by seeking the protection of the Polish king. This internal conflict eventually led to another major war, known as the 13 Years' War, which lasted from 1454 to 1466. In this conflict, the Prussian Confederation, actively supported by the Kingdom of Poland, fought against the weakened Teutonic Order. It was a long and draining struggle that further exhausted the Order's resources. The Knights could no longer dominate the battlefield as they once had. The cities of Prussia, with their significant financial resources, played a crucial role in sustaining the war effort against their former rulers. In the end, the Order was defeated once again, forcing them to accept another humiliating peace treaty. The outcome of this war was formalized in the Second Peace of Thorn in 1466. This treaty resulted in the permanent division of Prussia into two distinct parts. The western portion, which included the wealthy and powerful trading cities of Gdansk, Torun, and Elblag, was separated from the Order's control. This region became known as Royal Prussia, and was incorporated into the Kingdom of Poland as a semi-autonomous province. It enjoyed considerable privileges and freedoms under the Polish crown, which was exactly what the Prussian Confederation had fought for. The Polish king now had direct access to the Baltic Sea and control over the mouth of the Vistula River. The eastern part of the land remained under the control of the Teutonic Knights, but their situation was, well, drastically changed. This territory, with its capital moved to Königsberg, was now a mere remnant of their once great state. Crucially, the Grand Master of the Teutonic Order was forced to become a vassal of the King of Poland. This meant he had to swear an oath of fealty to the Polish monarch and provide him with military aid. The once proud and sovereign state of the Teutonic Order was now reduced to a Polish fiefdom. This division set the stage for two different paths of development, with one part of Prussia tied to Poland and the other struggling to find a new identity. The Teutonic Order state continued to exist as a vassal of Poland for several decades after the Second Peace of Thorn, but it was a state in terminal decline. The spirit of the crusading order was fading and its purpose had become, well, pretty unclear. The situation really came to a head in the early 16th century, a time of massive religious upheaval across Europe known as the Protestant Reformation. In 1511, a man named Albert, from the Hohenzollern family of Brandenburg, was elected as the Grand Master of the Teutonic Order. He was a shrewd and politically astute leader who realized that the old monastic state was just no longer viable in the changing world. Albert found himself caught in a difficult position. As Grand Master, he was a vassal of the Polish king, but he resisted paying homage, which led to another war with Poland that ended in a stalemate. So, seeking advice, Albert met with the famous Protestant reformer Martin Luther. Luther gave him a radical suggestion. He advised Albert to abandon the outdated rules of the religious order, get married, and transform the monastic state into a secular, hereditary duchy for himself and his family. This was a revolutionary idea. It meant dissolving the Teutonic order in Prussia and creating a whole new type of state, one based on family rule rather than a religious brotherhood. In 1525, Albert made his momentous decision. He formally converted to Lutheranism, becoming one of the first major German princes to embrace the new Protestant faith. Following Luther's advice, he secularized the state of the Teutonic order. He resigned his position as Grand Master and in a ceremony in Krakow, paid homage to the Polish king Sigismund I, known as Sigismund the Old. In return, the king recognized Albert as the first Duke of Prussia. The land that had been ruled by the knights for 3 centuries was now the Duchy of Prussia, a hereditary territory that would be passed down through Albert's family line, the Hohenzollerns. This act marked the official end of the Teutonic state in Prussia and the birth of a new entity. The Duchy of Prussia became the first Protestant state in Europe. While Albert was now a hereditary duke, he remained a vassal of the King of Poland, just as he had been as Grand Master. His new duchy was a Polish fief. However, the creation of a hereditary duchy under the control of the ambitious Hohenzollern family was a critical step. It laid the foundation for a more stable and dynastic form of rule, severing the final ties to the old crusading past and setting Prussia on a new course that would eventually lead it to much greater power and influence. The Hohenzollern family, to which Duke Albert belonged, was a very influential German noble dynasty. While one branch of the family now ruled the Duchy of Prussia as vassals of Poland, another, more senior branch ruled the Electorate of Brandenburg, a significant state within the Holy Roman Empire. The ruler of Brandenburg was one of the 7 electors who had the prestigious right to vote for the Holy Roman Emperor. For much of the 16th century, these 2 Hohenzollern territories, Brandenburg and Prussia, were ruled by different lines of the same family. They were geographically separate, with Polish Royal Prussia lying between them, and they had very different political statuses. A crucial development occurred due to the internal politics of the Hohenzollern family. Duke Albert's son, who succeeded him, was mentally unstable and died without any male heirs. The line of succession for the Duchy of Prussia was therefore in jeopardy. Through a series of carefully arranged agreements and marriage contracts, the senior Hohenzollern branch in Brandenburg secured the right to inherit the Duchy of Prussia if Albert's line died out. This planning paid off. In 1618, the ducal line in Prussia became extinct and the duchy passed directly to the Elector of Brandenburg, John Sigismund. This event created a personal union between the 2 states. From 1618 onward, the Elector of Brandenburg was also the Duke of Prussia. This new combined territory is often referred to by historians as Brandenburg Prussia. However, this union created a very strange and complex political situation for the ruler. As the Elector of Brandenburg, he was a prince of the Holy Roman Empire and a subject of the Holy Roman Emperor, but as the Duke of Prussia, he was a vassal of the King of Poland. He was a sovereign ruler in one sense, but a subordinate in 2 others, serving 2 different overlords for 2 different parts of his territory. This awkward arrangement defined the challenges facing the Hohenzollern rulers for the next few decades. Their lands were scattered across northern Germany and Poland, lacking territorial cohesion. Their political loyalties were divided and complicated. The dream of every Hohenzollern ruler from this point forward was to unite their lands and, most importantly, to shake off the humiliating vassalage to Poland. They wanted to be the true and absolute sovereign of the Duchy of Prussia, not just a duke who had to bend the knee to another king. This ambition would drive the policies of Brandenburg Prussia for the rest of the 17th century. The ruler who took the most decisive steps toward achieving full sovereignty for Prussia was Frederick William, who reigned from 1640 to 1688. He is known to history as the Great Elector because of his remarkable political skill and vision. When he came to the throne, his territories were in a terrible state, ravaged by the 30 Years' War. He understood that to achieve his goals, he needed a strong state with 2 key components, a powerful standing army and a centralized, efficient bureaucracy to collect the taxes needed to pay for it. He spent his long reign tirelessly working to build these foundations of a modern state. The Great Elector's army became his most important tool. Unlike the armies of the past, which were often hired mercenaries, Frederick William created a permanent professional military force that was loyal directly to him. This army gave him power both at home, allowing him to impose his will on reluctant nobles in cities and abroad, making Brandenburg Prussia a significant player in European politics. He now had a strong card to play in the complex game of international alliances and rivalries. He was waiting for the right moment to use this newfound military strength to achieve his ultimate goal for Prussia. His golden opportunity came during a major war between Sweden and Poland in the 1650s, known as the Swedish Deluge. Poland, his overlord for the Duchy of Prussia, was in deep trouble and on the verge of collapse. Frederick William played a masterful diplomatic game. At first he sided with the powerful Swedes, helping them against the Poles. In exchange for his help, the Swedish king recognized him as the full sovereign of Prussia. However, as the tide of the war began to turn, he skillfully switched sides and offered his support to the struggling Polish king. He was a pragmatic and opportunistic leader, loyal only to the interests of his own state. In 1657, his gamble paid off spectacularly. The Polish king, desperate for Frederick William's military support to drive out the Swedes, was forced to make a huge concession. In the Treaty of Wehlau-Bydgoszcz, Poland formally relinquished its overlordship of the Duchy of Prussia. Frederick William was now the full and undisputed sovereign of his duchy. He no longer had to pay homage to the Polish king. This was a monumental achievement. The great Elector had used his army and his cunning diplomacy to sever the final cord of vassalage. He had transformed the Duchy of Prussia from a Polish fief into a sovereign European state, paving the way for its future rise. The great Elector had achieved sovereignty for the Duchy of Prussia, but his successor, Frederick III, had an even grander ambition. He wanted the title of king. This was more than just a matter of prestige. A royal title would elevate his status among European rulers and solidify his family's position. The main obstacle was the Holy Roman Emperor, Leopold I. The emperor was reluctant to allow any prince within the empire to become a king, as it could challenge his own authority. However, Frederick III was a patient and clever negotiator, and he knew the emperor would eventually need something from him. He waited for the right moment to press his case. That moment arrived with the looming war of the Spanish succession at the turn of the 18th century. The emperor was building a grand coalition to fight against King Louis XIV of France and desperately needed allies and soldiers. Frederick III saw his chance. He offered the emperor the support of his well-trained Prussian army in the coming war. In exchange for this crucial military aid, he asked for just one thing: the emperor's permission to crown himself king. After some negotiation, Leopold I agreed, but with a specific condition. Frederick could not be king of Prussia, because part of Prussia, Royal Prussia, was still part of Poland, nor could he be a king within the Holy Roman Empire. The clever solution was the title King in Prussia. This title applied only to his sovereign Duchy of Prussia, which lay outside the borders of the Holy Roman Empire. It was a subtle but important distinction that satisfied the emperor's legal concerns. In January 1701, in the city of Königsberg, Frederick III crowned himself and his wife, becoming King Frederick I. The electorate of Brandenburg and the other Hohenzollern lands were now part of a state that was, at its core, a kingdom. The name Prussia soon came to be used for all the scattered Hohenzollern territories, and a new European kingdom was born. The first king, Frederick I, was known for his love of arts and culture, but his son, Frederick William I, was a very different ruler. He was obsessed with the military and with state finances. He was extremely frugal, cutting court expenses to pour every possible penny into his army. He created one of the most disciplined and professional armies in Europe, famous for its tall soldiers, the Potsdam Giants. When he died in 1740, he passed on to his son, Frederick II, a full treasury and a large, formidable army. It was this son, known as Frederick the Great, who would use these tools to elevate Prussia from a medium-sized kingdom to a true European powerhouse, seizing the province of Silesia from Austria, and forever changing the balance of power in Germany.